My stepmother canceled my children's dream vacation just days before departure, gifting the non-refundable tickets to her biological grandkids instead. She claimed my sons didn't deserve luxury. I didn't argue. I simply called the authorities, froze her access, and watched her world crumble. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. I was sitting in my car in the office parking garage, the engine idling, just trying to breathe. It was a Thursday evening, the kind of heavy, humid July evening that makes the air feel like a physical weight against your chest. My head was pounding, a rhythmic thud behind my eyes that had started during my 2:00 p.m. budget meeting and hadn't let up since. Being a senior software architect meant the pay was excellent, but the stress was a constant, low-level hum in my veins. But tonight, the headache didn't matter. The exhaustion didn't matter. In exactly 4 days, I would be on a plane to Miami with my 2 sons, Kyle, 14, and William, 12. From there, we were boarding the Obsidian Seas, a massive, floating palace of a cruise ship that I had spent the last 18 months saving for. I picked up my phone, needing a hit of dopamine to get me through the drive home. I opened the cruise line app. I wanted to see the countdown clock. I loved seeing it tick down, 3 days, 14 hours, 22 minutes. It was my lifeline. I tapped the icon. The blue logo spun for a moment, and then the dashboard loaded. My stomach dropped so hard I actually gasped. A sharp, ragged sound in the quiet car. The countdown was gone. In its place was a generic message. You have no upcoming bookings linked to this account. My hands started to tremble. It had to be a glitch. Apps crashed all the time. I was a developer. I knew how fragile code could be. I closed the app, swiped it away, and reopened it. Same message. You have no upcoming bookings. Panic, cold and sharp, pricked at my skin. I immediately dialed the customer service number, my fingers slipping on the screen. I put it on speaker and tossed the phone onto the passenger seat, gripping the steering wheel while the hold music, some cheerful, steel drum rendition of a pop song, mocked me. Thank you for holding, this is Marcus. How can I help you? Hi, Marcus, I said, my voice sounding tight and foreign to my own ears. I think there's a glitch in your app. My booking isn't showing up. My name is Martha. The reservation number is... I rattled it off from memory. I had memorized it months ago. There was the sound of typing on the other end. One moment, Martha. Let me pull that up. I stared at the concrete wall of the parking garage, counting the oil stains on the floor. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I see the booking here, Marcus said. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Oh, thank God, so it is just a glitch. Well, no, Marcus said slowly, his tone shifting. The booking is active, but you aren't listed as the primary passenger anymore. It looks like the passenger manifest was updated yesterday. The world seemed to tilt slightly to the left. What do you mean, updated? I didn't update anything. I'm the primary passenger. The other passengers are Kyle and William. No, ma'am, Marcus replied, sounding confused now. The passengers listed are Hannah and 2 minors, a Jason and a Sophie. The air left the car. Hannah, my stepsister. Jason and Sophie were her kids. That's impossible, I whispered. I paid for those tickets. I paid for the balcony suite. I paid for the drink packages. How could the names be changed? The account holder called in yesterday, Marcus explained, his voice wary now. She verified all the security questions. Date of birth, mother's maiden name, the last 4 digits of the credit card on file. She said there was a family emergency and she needed to transfer the tickets to her sister and nieces. Since she passed security, we processed the change. There was a transfer fee, which was paid. I didn't make that call, I said, my voice rising, bordering on a scream. I am the account holder. Ma'am, the caller identified herself as Martha, Marcus said defensively. She had all your information. It hit me then. The security questions, my mother's maiden name, my first pet, the address. Linda. My stepmother, Linda, was the only other person on earth who knew every single one of those answers. She was the one who had helped me set up my first bank account when I was 16. She knew my history. She knew my passwords because she had helped me organize my files when my father died. Put a hold on it, I snapped, tears hot and stinging in my eyes. Freeze the booking, that was fraud, I did not authorize that. I can't just freeze it based on a phone call, ma'am, you need to send in proof of identity and file a formal dispute. It takes 7 to 10 business days to investigate. The ship leaves in 4 days, I yelled. I'm sorry, Marcus said, and he actually sounded like he meant it. There's nothing I can do right now. I hung up. I sat there in the silence, the dashboard clock blinking 6:14 p.m. Then my phone buzzed, a text message. It was from Linda. Don't bother calling the cruise line back, Martha. I spoke to them. It's done. Hannah needs this break more than you do. You can always book another one with your fancy salary. Your kids don't deserve this life if they don't appreciate the struggle. It's better this way. I stared at the words until they blurred. It wasn't just theft. It was a lesson. She was teaching me a lesson with my own money, punishing my children to reward her own blood. The betrayal was worse than the financial loss. It was a dagger aimed specifically at the hearts of my children. I drove home in a daze. The highway was a blur of red tail lights and gray asphalt. Every time I blinked, I saw the text message again. Your kids don't deserve this life. Kyle and William were good boys. They were honor roll students. They did chores without asking. They had spent the last month watching YouTube walkthroughs of the ship, planning which water slides they were going to hit first. William had even started packing his suitcase a week early, carefully folding his favorite t-shirts. How was I going to tell them? When I pulled into the driveway of my modest suburban home, the sight of the front window broke my heart. I could see the silhouette of William in the living room, probably testing out his snorkeling gear again. I turned off the car but didn't get out. I needed to think. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. The shock was beginning to recede, replaced by a cold, simmering rage. It was a physical sensation, like swallowing ice. I replayed the last few months in my head. Linda had been over a lot recently. She had been helping me while I worked late, picking the boys up from soccer, bringing in the mail. The mail. That was how she got the booking reference number. I had printed out the itinerary and left it on the kitchen counter in the vacation folder I was building. She must have snapped a photo of it. And she knew my personal data, my mother's maiden name, my first school, because she had been in my life since I was 10. She used her proximity, her role as Grandma Linda, to weaponize my own life against me. I unlocked my phone and looked at the banking app. The cruise was fully paid for, $6,000 including the flights and excursions. But then I noticed something else. There was a pending charge from yesterday, $250, cruise line name change fee. She had used my credit card to pay the fee to steal my tickets. I laughed. It was a short, dry, humorless sound. The audacity was breathtaking. She didn't even spend her own money to steal from me. She felt so entitled to my resources that she used them to facilitate her own crime. I walked into the house, forcing a smile onto my face. "Mom," William shouted, running into the hallway. He was wearing his swim goggles on his forehead. "Kyle said we can bring walkie-talkies on the ship. Is that true?" Kyle looked up from the couch, his teenage attempt at coolness failing to hide his excitement. "Yeah, I read on the forums that the reception is bad, so walkie-talkies are key." I looked at them, my boys. They were the only family I had left that mattered. My father had passed away 5 years ago, and since then I had tried so hard to keep the peace with Linda and Hannah. I had paid for Hannah's car repairs. I had paid off Linda's credit card debt twice. I had tried to buy their love, or at least their tolerance, because I didn't want to be an orphan. "That sounds like a great idea," I said, my voice barely trembling. "Listen, guys, Mom has a massive headache. I need to go lie down for an hour. Can you order pizza?" Sure, Kyle said, looking at me closely. You okay? Just work, I lied. Work is crazy. I went to my bedroom and locked the door. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the photo of my father on the nightstand. Take care of them, Martha, he had told me before he died. Linda isn't strong like you. Hannah isn't smart like you. You're the head of the family now. I had taken that promise seriously. I had been their safety net. But safety nets are for people who fall, not for people who push you off the ledge. I looked at the text from Linda again. You can always book another one. She thought this was just about money. She thought that because I was a senior architect, money was infinite and feelings were disposable. She thought she had one because she had the tickets and the cruise line's bureaucracy was on her side. I opened my laptop. I didn't go to the cruise website. Instead, I opened a specific fold. On my hard drive, labeled estate and assets. Linda thought she knew everything about my life. She thought she knew every password, every account, every secret. But she had forgotten one crucial thing. The house she lived in, the house my father and she had shared for 20 years, wasn't hers. It was in a trust. And as of 3 months ago, when the final clause of my father's complicated probate will triggered, I was the sole trustee. She didn't know that yet. She thought the deed was still in probate limbo. She thought she was untouchable in her castle. I opened a new email draft. I wasn't writing to the cruise line. I was writing to my lawyer, Mr. Henderson. Subject, immediate eviction proceedings and fraud report. My fingers hovered over the keys. If I did this, there was no going back. It wasn't just a fight, it was a war. It would destroy the fragile remnant of my father's family. I heard William laugh in the other room. I started typing. To understand why Linda did this, you have to understand the dynamic of my family. My mother died when I was 8. 2 years later, my father married Linda. Linda was a beautiful woman in her 40s then, a former beauty pageant runner-up who never quite got over the fact that she didn't win the crown. She brought Hannah, her daughter from a previous marriage, into our lives. Hannah was 4 years younger than me. From day one, the dynamic was set. I was the smart one, the resilient one, the one who didn't need help. Hannah was the delicate one, the creative soul, the one who needed constant support. When I was 16, I was working part-time at a library to save for a car. Hannah was 14 and was given a brand new convertible because Linda convinced my dad that Hannah couldn't handle the stress of the bus. When I got into a top-tier engineering university on a scholarship, Linda rolled her eyes and said, "Well, of course, Martha is going to be a sterile career woman. Someone has to pay the taxes." When Hannah dropped out of 3 different art schools, Linda said, "The world just isn't ready for her vision yet." My father was a good man, but he was weak when it came to Linda. He hated conflict. He let her steer the ship because he just wanted peace. When he died of a sudden heart attack 5 years ago, the buffer between us vanished. I was 33, already established in my career, already a widow myself. My husband, Mark, had died in a car accident when William was a baby. I was alone, raising 2 boys and managing a high-pressure career. Linda and Hannah descended on me like vultures. "Your father would want you to help us," Linda had said at the funeral, wearing a black dress that cost more than my first car. And I did. I paid for the funeral. I let Linda stay in the big house, paying the property taxes myself. I gave Hannah loans for her failed businesses, a candle shop, a dog-walking service, a custom jewelry line. None of the money ever came back. But lately, Linda had been getting worse, more aggressive. She had started making comments about my boys. "Kyle is so arrogant," she'd say when he got an A in math. "William is too soft," she'd sneer when he cried over a movie. The resentment was palpable. She hated that I, the stepdaughter she never loved, was the one holding the purse strings. She hated that my children were thriving while Hannah's children, Jason and Sophie, were struggling because Hannah refused to get a steady job. Linda, now 62, was a master of appearances. To the outside world, she was the grieving widow and the doting grandmother. She volunteered at the church. She baked cookies for the neighbors. She always looked immaculate, hair sprayed into a helmet of blonde perfection, nails done, jewelry clinking. But behind closed doors, she was a calculator. She measured love in dollars. Last month at a family barbecue, the cracks had started to show. I had mentioned the cruise. I was so excited I let my guard down. "I'm taking the boys on the Obsidian Seas," I had said, showing them the brochure. "We're doing the dolphin swim." Hannah had looked at the brochure, her eyes narrowing. "Must be nice," she mumbled, lighting a cigarette. "Jason and Sophie have never even been to the beach." "Well," Linda had interjected, sipping her wine, her eyes cold and sharp as flint. "Maybe if some people shared their blessings instead of hoarding them, everyone could experience nice things. After all, family money is family money." "I earned this money, Linda," I had said gently. "It's not family money, it's my salary." Linda had laughed then, a chilling, high-pitched sound. "Oh, Martha, you always were so selfish, just like your mother." I should have known then. I should have seen the wheels turning behind her meticulously applied eyeshadow. She didn't see me as a person. She saw me as an ATM that had malfunctioned, and she felt entitled to smash the machine to get the cash inside. And now she had involved Hannah. Hannah, who was 34 but acted 14. Hannah, who had apparently accepted stolen tickets for her children without a second thought. I stood up from my desk. The email to my lawyer was drafted but not sent. I needed more. Evicting her was the nuclear option, but for the immediate problem, the cruise, I needed leverage. I needed to make her hurt enough to give the tickets back, or at least suffer for taking them. I thought about Hannah. Hannah was weak. Hannah was terrified of authority, and Hannah was currently receiving state benefits, unemployment and housing assistance, because she claimed she had zero income and no assets. If Hannah went on a $6,000 luxury cruise and posted about it on social media, which she absolutely would, she would be committing welfare fraud. And Linda was technically the executor of my dad's smaller, secondary checking account, which was supposed to be used only for house maintenance. I logged into my father's old bank portal. I had the viewing rights. I scanned the statements. There it was. 3 days ago, a withdrawal of $2,000, cash. Linda didn't use her own money to pay the transfer fees or buy the plane tickets for Hannah's kids. She had drained the last of the house maintenance fund, money that legally belonged to the trust, not her. She had embezzled funds to steal my vacation. A cold smile touched my lips. She thought she was the matriarch. She thought she was the queen bee teaching the worker drone a lesson. She had no idea she had just handed me the match to burn her entire kingdom down. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my home office, the blue light of my 3 monitors illuminating the room like a command center. While Kyle and William slept, dreaming of water slides and unlimited soft serve, I was building a dossier. First, I formalized the paper trail. I downloaded the bank statements from my father's trust account, the one Linda had treated as her personal piggy bank. I highlighted the $2,000 cash withdrawal. Then, I cross-referenced the timestamp with the change fee charge on my credit card. They were 2 hours apart. She had driven to the bank, withdrawn the cash, deposited it into her own account, and then used my card for the fee, likely keeping the cash for spending money on the ship. It was sloppy, it was arrogant, it was criminal. At 8:00 a.m. sharp, I called Mr. Henderson, the estate attorney who had handled my father's will. "Martha," his gravelly voice came through the speaker. "Everything all right? It's early." "No, Arthur, it's not." I explained the situation. I told him about the tickets, the impersonation, and the withdrawal from the maintenance fund. I heard his pen scratching furiously against a notepad. "Okay," he said, his tone shifting from friendly to professional. "The impersonation is identity theft, plain and simple. We can file a police report for that immediately. The withdrawal is a breach of fiduciary duty if she's listed as a secondary signer or straight theft if she's not. But Martha, the tickets, Getting those back in 3 days is going to be a nightmare. The cruise line will see it as a civil dispute. I don't just want the tickets, Arthur, I said, looking at a framed photo of my dad on my desk. I want her out. She used the house money to steal from my children. She's unsafe to be in that property. You're the trustee, Arthur reminded me. The house belongs to the trust. She has a life estate clause, provided she maintains the property and pays the bills. Embezzling the maintenance fund violates the terms. We can move for eviction. It won't be instant, but we can serve her with a notice to quit. Do it, I said. Draft it. I'm going over there today. Martha, be careful. If you go over there, do not lose your temper. She will try to bait you. If you scream or threaten her, she can claim harassment. In fact, record it. Use your phone. I intend to, I replied. After hanging up, I moved to the second part of my investigation. Hannah. I logged into Facebook. Hannah's profile was public. Of course it was. She lived for the likes. And there it was, a post from 2 hours ago. So blessed, surprise vacay with my babies. Ship Miami bound in 3 days, deserving mom life haters gonna hate. Below it was a picture of her new suitcases. Suitcases that looked suspiciously like the expensive hardshell ones I had bought for my dad years ago. I scrolled through the comments. Linda had commented, "Have the best time, you've worked so hard for this." Worked hard? Hannah hadn't held a W-2 job since 2016. I took screenshots. I captured everything. Then, I went to the state government website. I looked up the requirements for the specific housing assistance program Hannah was on. Beneficiaries must report all gifts, income, or changes in assets exceeding $500 immediately. Failure to report luxury travel or significant gifts constitutes welfare fraud. The cruise tick. ETs were valued at $1,800 per person. I printed the screenshot of the regulations. I printed Hannah's Facebook post. I printed the bank statements. I put everything into a crisp, red folder. It looked like a project file for work. In a way, it was. It was the most important project of my life. I walked out to the kitchen. Kyle was eating cereal. "Morning, Mom," he said. "Hey, I was checking the weather for Miami. It says there might be rain on Tuesday. Should we pack ponchos?" My heart shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces. I looked at his hopeful face, his messy hair. He had no idea that his grandmother had stolen his joy. "Pack them just in case," I said, my voice steady. "Better safe than sorry." I grabbed my car keys. I wasn't going to work. I was going to war. Linda's house, my house, was a 20-minute drive away. It was a beautiful, sprawling ranch-style home that my father had built with his own hands. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Hannah's beat-up sedan parked next to Linda's pristine Lexus. Perfect, they were both there. I started the voice recorder app on my phone and slipped it into the breast pocket of my blazer. I took a deep breath, grabbed the red folder, and got out of the car. I didn't knock, I used my key. I walked into the foyer. I could hear them in the kitchen. They were laughing. The smell of brewing coffee and cinnamon rolls wafted through the air. It was a smell from my childhood, a smell that used to mean safety, now twisted into something nauseating. "I'm just saying, make sure you get the drink package added," Linda was saying. "I can probably transfer a little more cash if..." She stopped. I was standing in the doorway of the kitchen. The laughter died instantly. Hannah looked down at her coffee cup. Linda, however, didn't flinch. She just set down her mug, her perfectly manicured nails clicking against the ceramic. "Martha," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness, "we weren't expecting you. You usually call." "I usually do," I said, walking to the kitchen island and placing the red folder down with a heavy thud. "But then again, you usually don't impersonate me to commit felony identity theft." Hannah shrank into her chair. "Mom," she whispered. "Hush, Hannah," Linda snapped. She looked at me, her expression hardening. "Don't be dramatic, Martha. I didn't steal anything. I reallocated resources. Those boys of yours, they have everything." iPads, private tutors, designer clothes. Hannah's kids have nothing. I made an executive decision as the grandmother. You aren't the account holder, I said, keeping my voice terrifyingly calm. I am. You called the cruise line, pretended to be me, and stole $6,000 worth of tickets. I consider it back pay, Linda said, waving a hand dismissively. For all the years I put up with your sullen attitude growing up. For all the times I took care of your father while you were off at college. You were his wife, Linda. That wasn't a job, it was a marriage. It was work, she shouted, finally cracking. And you know what? You can afford it. You make more in a month than Hannah makes in a year. Why are you so greedy? Why can't you just be happy that your niece and nephew get to see the ocean? Because you stole it from my sons, I said. You stole their birthday present, and you did it by embezzling money from the trust. I opened the folder. I slid the bank statement across the granite countertop. I know about the $2,000, Linda. I know you drained the maintenance fund. Linda glanced at the paper, then shrugged. The roof needed fixing. I pulled the cash to pay a contractor. He wanted cash. Really? I asked. Because the roof was replaced last year. I have the receipt. And strangely, that withdrawal happened 2 hours before you paid the change fee on my stolen tickets. You can't prove what I spent that cash on, she sneered. It's my word against yours, and your father left this house to me. No, I said, dropping the first bomb. He left you a life estate. He left the house to the trust. I am the trustee. And the life estate is conditional on you not damaging the value of the asset or misusing trust funds. Linda's eyes narrowed. What are you saying? I'm saying you violated the terms of the will, I said. I spoke to the lawyer this morning. We are initiating eviction proceedings. You have 30 days to vacate. The silence in the kitchen was absolute. Even the refrigerator hum seemed to stop. Hannah looked up, her eyes wide. Mom, is that true? Linda's face turned a shade of red I had never seen before. She stood up, knocking her chair over. You wouldn't dare, she hissed. I am your stepmother, I raised you. You tolerated me, I corrected. And you stole from my children. You made a choice, Linda. You chose Hannah's kids over mine. Fine, now I'm choosing my kids over you. I turned to Hannah. And you, I said. Hannah flinched. You're going. On a luxury cruise. With what money? Because according to the state, you're indigent. I slid the screenshot of the welfare regulations across the counter. If you get on that boat, Hannah, you are committing welfare fraud. And since I'm a mandated reporter for my company's ethics board, I won't hesitate to forward your vacation photos to your caseworker. Hannah burst into tears. That's not fair, you're ruining everything. The kids are already packed. My kids are packed too, I screamed, finally losing my composure. My voice echoed off the high ceilings. My kids are at home right now, packing their snorkels, thinking they are leaving in 3 days. You took that from them. You think I care about your vacation. Get out, Linda said, her voice low and shaking. Get out of my house. It's not your house, I said, leaning in close to her face. It's mine, and I'll be back with the sheriff to serve the papers. I turned and walked out. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. I didn't look back. I got in my car, my hands shaking uncontrollably as I tried to put the key in the ignition. I had dropped the bomb, but as I drove away, I realized something terrifying. They didn't offer to give the tickets back. They were still going to go. Linda was too proud to fold, and Hannah was too stupid to understand the risk. They were going to call my bluff. By the time I got back to my home office, the fallout had begun. My phone was vibrating incessantly. My Aunt Susan, Linda's sister, was calling, then my cousin, then a number I didn't recognize. I let them all go to voicemail. I sat down and listened to the first message. It was Susan. Martha, I just got off the phone with Linda. She is hysterical. How could you threaten to kick an old woman out of her home? After everything she did for your father? She said there was a mix-up with the tickets and you went psychotic. You need to apologize and fix this. Family helps family. A mix-up, that was her spin. I didn't respond. Instead, I checked the cruise app again. The names were still Hannah, Jason, Sophie. I called the cruise line one more time. I tried to escalate it to the fraud department. I have a police report number now, I told the supervisor, my voice rasping. I can send it to you. The person who changed the names is not me. I understand, ma'am, the supervisor said, sounding exhausted. But the ship sails in 72 hours. Even with a police report, our legal team won't be able to reverse the manifest and reissue the tickets to you before departure. The security protocols for international travel are strict. We can refund you the money after the investigation concludes, probably in 60 days. So they get to go, I asked, feeling sick. They get to go on my money. If the tickets aren't canceled, yes. And we can't cancel them without the current primary passenger's consent or a court order, which you won't get in 2 days. I hung up, I put my head in my hands. I had the leverage, but the timeline was against me. The legal system was too slow. Linda knew that. She knew that even if I evicted her later, she would still get this victory now. She would still get to post the photos. She would still get to smirk knowing my kids were sitting at home. I walked into the living room. It was afternoon now. Kyle and William were building a pile of ship necessities on the rug. Sunscreen, sunglasses, a waterproof card deck. William looked up, beaming. Mom, look, I found Dad's old binoculars. We can use them to see whales. The sight of those binoculars, the ones my late husband used to take bird watching, broke me. I couldn't let this happen. I couldn't let them win. I walked back to my office and closed the door. I needed to stop thinking like a heartbroken mother and start thinking like a ruthless architect. If I couldn't get back on the ship, I had to make sure the ship didn't sail for them. I looked at the red folder. The welfare fraud. I picked up the phone. I didn't call the general hotline. I called a friend of mine, Sarah, who worked in the state administrative office. We weren't close, but we were LinkedIn connections. Sarah, it's Martha. Hey, long time, what's up? This is going to sound crazy, I said, but I need to know the direct process for reporting immediate, high-value welfare fraud. Like, leaving the country in 48 hours immediate. Sarah paused. If you have proof, like bank statements or travel itineraries, you can submit an emergency flagged tip to the Integrity Division. If the value is high enough, they sometimes freeze benefits pending investigation. It stops the EBT cards instantly. What about passports? I asked. If someone owes money to the state? If there's an active investigation for fraud over a certain amount, the state can flag the passport. But that takes time. I didn't have time. Then my phone buzzed again, a text from Hannah. Mom says you're bluffing, you can't evict her, and I'm going on that cruise. My kids deserve it. Try to stop me and I'll tell everyone you're abusing an elderly widow. She was taunting me. I looked at the screen. They were so confident. They thought the social pressure of family would hold me back. They thought I would fold to protect my reputation. I opened my email client. I composed an email to the fraud division. I attached the screenshots of Hannah's post, Miami bound. I attached the proof of the ticket value. I attached the bank statements showing Linda's theft. But I didn't hit send yet. I had one more card to play, a card that would burn the bridge forever. I logged into the family cell phone plan. I still paid for everyone's phones. It was a remnant of the help I provided. I went to the usage logs. I wanted to see who Linda had been talking to. There were dozens of calls to a specific number in the last week. I Googled it. It was a payday loan company. Linda wasn't just broke. She was drowning. That's why she needed the maintenance fund. That's why she needed the change fee from my card. She wasn't just stealing a vacation. She was trying to run away from debt, or maybe she had promised Hannah this trip and couldn't pay for it, so she stole it to save face. This was bigger than a cruise. The house was at risk. If she had liens against her, they could come after the property. My duty as trustee wasn't just to the house. It was to the beneficiaries, my children. I realized then that there was no reconciliation. There was no fixing this. They were parasites, and they had burrowed too deep. I took a deep breath. I forwarded the fraud evidence to the state. I hit send. Then I opened a new window. I went to the airline website. I had the flight confirmation numbers because they were part of the original package I booked. I entered the confirmation code. Passenger Hannah, passenger Linda. I hovered over the cancel booking button. Since I had paid for the flights with my credit card and the airline account was linked to my email, I still had administrative control. Linda had changed the cruise booking, but she had forgotten to lock me out of the flights. If I canceled them, they would be stranded at the airport. They would miss the ship. It was petty, it was vindictive, it was exactly what they deserved. But just as I was about to click, the door to my office opened. It was Kyle. "Mom," he said softly, "why were you yelling at Grandma on the phone earlier? Is everything okay with the trip?" I froze. I looked at my son, then at the screen where cancel booking pulsed in red. I had to tell him I couldn't lie anymore. "Kyle," I said, turning my chair around, "come here, we need to have a family meeting." I wasn't going to cancel the flights quietly. I was going to destroy them publicly. But first, I had to break my own children's hearts. Telling my sons was the hardest thing I have ever had to do. I sat them down on the living room floor, surrounded by their piles of snorkel gear and folded t-shirts. When I explained that Grandma Linda had taken the tickets and given them to Hannah's kids, the silence was deafening. William didn't cry immediately. He just looked at his half-packed suitcase, then back at me, his eyes wide with a confusion that hurt more than tears. Kyle, older and sharper, turned red with anger. "She can't do that," he said, his voice cracking. "It's stealing." "I know," I said, pulling them both into a hug that was as much for me as it was for them. "And I promise you, I am doing everything I can to fix this. But we might not be getting on that specific ship on Monday." William finally let out a small sob. "But I told all my friends." That broke the dam. I held them while they cried, my own tears hot and silent. But as I held them, my sadness calcified into something harder, something permanent. Linda hadn't just stolen a vacation, she had humiliated my children. She had made them feel small and powerless. I stood up. "Pack the rest of your things away," I said gently. "We're going to order the biggest pizza they make, but first, Mom has one last errand to run." I didn't cancel the flights from my computer. That was too impersonal. I wanted to see her face when the walls closed in. I called the sheriff's department to request a civil standby. I had the eviction notice freshly drafted by Mr. Henderson, signed and notarized via Rush Courier an hour ago. I had the proof of the trust embezzlement. I had the welfare fraud report confirmation number. And I knew exactly where they were. According to a Facebook notification that had popped up on my phone, Linda was hosting a Bon Voyage dinner at the house. My house. She had invited her sister Susan, her church friends, and obviously Hannah. She was parading her victory around, celebrating the trip she had stolen with the money she had embezzled. I met the deputy, a stern-looking man named Offie. "Sir Miller," at the end of the driveway. "You have the paperwork?" he asked. "Right here," I said, handing him the eviction order and the proof of ownership. "She's a tenant at will who has violated the terms of the life estate by committing theft against the trust." "All right," he said, "keep it civil. I'm here to ensure peace is kept while you serve notice." We walked up the driveway. The windows were glowing with warm light. I could hear clinking glasses and laughter. It sounded like a celebration. I opened the front door. The dining room was full. Linda was at the head of the table, holding a glass of wine. Hannah was next to her, beaming, showing her aunt a new bikini she had bought, likely with the cash Linda had stolen. The room went silent as I walked in, Officer Miller towering behind me. "Martha," Aunt Susan asked, dropping her fork, "is everything okay?" Linda stood up, her face draining of color. "What is this? You bring a policeman to my dinner party." It's not your dinner party, Linda, I said, my voice projecting clearly to every corner of the room. And it's not your house, not anymore. Don't start this nonsense again, Linda hissed, looking nervously at her church friends. We can talk about this later. Martha is just upset about a misunderstanding regarding the vacation. It's not a misunderstanding, I said, stepping forward. It's fraud. I threw the red folder onto the table. It slid across the tablecloth, knocking over a wine glass. Red wine spilled like blood across the white linen. Inside that folder, I announced, looking directly at the guests, is proof that Linda embezzled $2,000 from my father's trust maintenance fund 3 days ago. She used that money to pay the transfer fees to steal the cruise tickets I purchased for my sons. Gasps rippled through the room. Aunt Susan looked at Linda. Linda, is that true? She's lying, Linda shrieked. She's jealous. She's trying to ruin Hannah's happiness. And speaking of Hannah, I said, turning my gaze to my stepsister. Hannah shrank back. I suggest you check your email. I forwarded the confirmation to you. I reported your little vacation to the State Integrity Division about an hour ago. Since you're claiming full housing and unemployment benefits, a $6,000 luxury cruise is a significant change in circumstances. They've flagged your file for immediate review. Hannah dropped her phone. You called the state. I did, I said. You wanted a free ride. You just got one, straight to an audit. You monster, Linda screamed, lunging toward me. Officer Miller stepped in, his hand raised. Ma'am, step back, he ordered, his voice brooking no argument. She can't do this, Linda wailed, turning to the officer. This is my home, my husband left it to me. Actually, I said, handing the eviction notice to the officer, who then handed it to Linda. He left it to the trust. I am the trustee. You have violated the fiduciary terms by stealing from the estate accounts. This is a formal notice to quit. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. If you aren't out by August 15th, the sheriff will return to forcibly remove you. Linda stared at the paper, her hands shaking so violently the paper rattled. She looked at her friends, her sister, her daughter. She looked for sympathy, but she found only shock and embarrassment. Her mask of the benevolent matriarch had slipped, revealing the thief underneath. You can't, she whispered. Where will I go? You have the money you stole, I said coldly. Use that for a hotel. Oh, wait, you spent it on the cruise. I pulled out my phone. Which brings me to the final point, I said. Since you stole the cruise booking, I couldn't cancel it. The ship leaves Monday, however. I tapped the screen. I still control the airline account. I just canceled your flights. They're non-refundable. So unless you plan on driving 18 hours to Miami by tomorrow morning, you're going to miss the boat. Hannah let out a high-pitched wail. My vacation, the kids are packed. My kids were packed too, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. And you laughed about it. You posted hashtags about it. You thought because I was family, I would just take it. You forgot that I'm the one who signs the checks. I looked at the room of silent, stunned guests. I suggest you all finish your dinner quickly, I said. The host has a lot of packing to do. I turned on my heel and walked out. As the door closed behind me, I heard the sound of Linda sobbing, a raw, ugly sound of total defeat. It didn't make me happy. It didn't fix the hole in my heart where my son's excitement used to be. But as I walked down the driveway to my car, the night air felt cleaner. Lighter. I had burned the bridge, but for the first time in years, I could see the other side. The fallout was swift and brutal. Linda tried to fight the eviction, of course. She hired a cheap lawyer who tried to argue that the withdrawal was a clerical error. But Mr. Henderson destroyed them in court. The paper trail was undeniable. The judge upheld the eviction, citing malicious waste of trust assets. 30 days later, I stood in the driveway of my father's house and watched as a moving truck took Linda's things away. She was moving into a small one-bedroom apartment on the other side of town, one she had to pay for herself, without the allowance I had provided for years. She didn't look at me as she got into her car. She looked old, defeated. The glamour was gone, replaced by the bitter reality of her choices. Hannah fared even worse. The state takes welfare fraud very seriously. Her benefits were frozen pending a full investigation. She was forced to move in with Linda in that tiny apartment. The stress of the audit, combined with the humiliation of the canceled trip, caused a rift between them. I heard from Aunt Susan that they scream at each other constantly, blaming one another for their downfall. As for the cruise, they never made it. Without the flights, they couldn't get to Miami in time. The ship sailed without them. Because they were no-shows, the cruise line canceled the booking entirely. However, once the police report for identity theft was fully processed, the cruise line's corporate office contacted me. They admitted that their security verification had been insufficient. They didn't want a lawsuit. They refunded the full $6,000 to my credit card. And then, as a gesture of goodwill, they offered me a future cruise credit for 50% of the value. I didn't book the Obsidian Seas again. The memory was too tainted. Instead, 6 months later, during the winter break, I took Kyle and William to Hawaii. We didn't need a floating palace. We rented a small house on the beach. We went snorkeling in real reefs, not a man-made lagoon. We ate shaved ice and hiked volcanoes. On the last night of the trip, we were sitting on the lanai, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold. Kyle looked up from his book. "Mom." "Yeah, honey." "This is better," he said. "This is way better than the cruise." William nodded, his mouth full of pineapple. "Yeah, no formal dinners, and no Grandma Linda." I laughed. It was a genuine, full-throated laugh that felt like it was healing something deep inside my chest. "Yeah," I agreed, pulling them both into a side hug. "It really is." I had lost the illusion of a family, but I had saved the reality of one. I had protected what mattered. My father's legacy was safe. My children were happy, and I was free. Linda had said my children didn't deserve that life. She was right. They didn't deserve a life of manipulation, theft, and conditional love. They deserved peace. And for the first time, I had finally given it to them.